My name is Jean-Paul Rodrigue. I'm a professor at the Department of Maritime Business Administration at Texas A&M University in Galveston. There are two major issues concerning this strike. The first concern wages, because the last few years have been very highly inflationary. Consumers and workers have lost roughly 25% of their purchasing power, and the ILA is trying to catch up a little bit with this. So that's the first issue. Compensation. It's always been an issue when you have a labor movement. The second one, which is excessively contentious, concerns automation. Most of the ports in the United States are plans to automate their terminal in the coming years. Some are already automated, and the ILA would like to put some kind of a stop to that because they are concerned that this is going to result in lost jobs in the future. Currently, all the major container terminals on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast have essentially ceased operations. They are not admitting and putting ships out. So ports activity for container terminals has stopped. Longshoremen are very essential workers in port terminal operations. They are the one handling the cargo, essentially operating the machinery that handles the cargo. Everything that touches the cargo in or out of a ship is handled by a longshoreman. Ports are essentially one of the most important strategic assets to the US economy because they are the gateways to international trade. The United States is one of the world's leading importer and exporter. So therefore, the great majority of the commodities, the goods that enter or exit these countries are through a port. On the short term, not that much. If it lasts just, let's say, a couple of days, we'll not notice it too much. But it starts to last longer than 1 week, we're going to start to see serious, I would say quite serious problems in supply chain. And we're going to start to see all sorts of, you can call them unintended consequences. That is, everything is interlinked, and therefore things are going to become scarce, more expensive, relatively quickly. Okay, so in the United States, roughly 90% of the trade goes through waterways, enter or exit through a port. For the Gulf Coast, particularly Houston, it is going to be a very significant impact in terms of the composition of import versus exports. On the import side, what comes in are retail goods, electronic, furniture, food. So in a matter of a week or two, you're going to start to see very serious, you could say, disruption and shortages concerning these supply chains. On the export side, Houston is a major exporter of resins and plastics, also chemicals, and also car parts and cotton, for instance. And major importers of these commodities are going to start to see disruption and shortages in the coming weeks if this endures. Paradoxically, the current situation is quite different than COVID, and in some ways quite worse. During COVID, ports were not closed. They were still operating, and they were simply dealing with disruption and trying to accommodate them as quickly as possible. Currently, the ports are not operating, and that's a very, very big difference. However, the ports on the West Coast are operating, but there's not enough capacity to cope with these disruptions. Initially, consumers are going to barely noticing it, but if it starts to last more than 1 week or so, we're going to start to see disruption, shortages over some commodities. For instance, I'll give you an example. 90% or 98% of all the coffee coming in this country comes in containers. So we may start to see problems there. Also, tropical fruits, everything which is cold chain related is going to quickly be disrupted. And consumers at a grocery store, on the store shelves, or even buying stuff online are going to start to notice in a matter of a week or so. Again, the strike is coming up at a very complicated time as usual. It's during the electoral cycle, and it's going to put tremendous pressures on the federal government to intervene within a week or so. Already importers and exporters already sent notification to the federal government that this is in some ways unacceptable. And therefore, the federal government, particularly in that case, the Biden administration, is in a bit of a bind because it has to intervene over a labor group, which is its support base, At the same time, it has also to protect national interests, which are consumers, the general public, corporation. So it's going to create complicated political situation. But you cannot get shortages during election time.